Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm your Harpreet Singh with the daily analysis of the Hindu from 24th of December 2024. Let's begin with today's analysis. So this is a QR code where you can basically find the particular PDF along with the other material that is required for your preparation. So what all topics we have taken for today's analysis, please have a look here. First, the state of forest report, very important. That can be asked in your prelims as well as the mains examination, and you can quote this report in various answers in your mains examination when issues related to development environment comes. Next is protected area permits, then the 13th amendment with respect to the Sri Lankan constitution. Then we have the Typhon missile system and the bullet train with respect to India. So let's begin with today's analysis. Okay, so mains topics, let's begin. This is the article that was there in today's newspaper with respect to India State of Forest Report 2023. Now, this becomes very important because it gives you a proper analysis of the tree cover as a forest cover with respect to the states, where it has increased, where it has decreased, what are the challenges that are associated with the forest resources. So we shall analyze all of them in detail. Let's begin. Okay, the India State of Forest Report. Now, see, the important thing over here is that it is published biennially. So, first thing, and by the Forest Survey of India under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. It is a government report, and that is why it becomes important also. Governments generally, while even UPSC, while preparing for the examination also, it picks up data from this particular government resource. Now, before we move on to the report also, because we have mentioned Forest Survey of India, let us have a brief idea what is FSI. Forest Survey of India. Forest Survey of India is a government organization that monitors and assesses the India's forest resources. What is the mandate of FSI? Its main role is regularly survey and assess the country's forest resources. Historically, Forest Survey of India was established on June 1, 1981, replacing the pre-investment of Survey of Forest Resources, which was started in 1965. So, its major dimension is about assessing and monitoring the Indian forest resources, how we can conserve them also, how it can be utilized also. That was a major aspect. Now, please remember the first report, India State of Forest Report, was published in 1987. That was the first time the report was published. And then we see in 2023, it is the 18th edition of the report. And the report contains information on the forest cover, tree cover, mangrove cover, growing stock, carbon stock in India's forest resource. And obviously, it helps us in policy planning and what should be the way forward. Is the forest cover deteriorating? If yes, then why? What can be done? All these recommendations and challenges are also mentioned in this particular report. So it becomes very important from the policy perspective and analysis. Okay, now if we move ahead, please understand, this is from the report itself. Forest cover mapping. Now, we need to understand also certain terminologies before we move ahead, because this can be asked in your prelims very importantly, along with the mains obviously from the perspective of policy planning. Definition: land more than 1 hectare in area with a tree canopy density of more than 10%, including tree orchard, bamboo and palms, etc., we can classify them as forest. What is this? This is basically definition of forest. So this is again a technical definition. You should be knowing that. Next is classification of forest. Now please see. Very dense forest, canopy density of greater than 70%. Moderately dense forest, canopy density of 40 to 70%. You would be basically remember this. This can be asked again in the prelims. It has been asked once earlier also. It can be asked again also. So you should be having a brief idea of this. What is open forest? Canopy density of 10 to 40%. Scrub, the canopy density of less than 10%, generally with shrubs interspread with trees. This is the classification of forest along with the definition that is mentioned over here. Now, please remember, how do you get the canopy density and how is the data is available to you? Basically, please remember over here, the Ministry of Forest and Environment basically uses the various satellite resources in order to do that. So that is why we realize that we have ISRO's LIST 3 sensor on the IRS, Indian Remote Sensing Resource Satellites, which is basically used to observe from the space itself and then get an accurate measurement of what the canopy density is, what the forest cover is. So it is more accurate in nature. So that is why this is the definition, this is the classification, and this is how we get it. So just have a look at it. It's useful for the prelims and mains perspective. Now let's move ahead. Key highlights. Now please understand, category increase in forest cover and total increase in forest and tree cover. Now please see, increase has been there by 156 square kilometer, and that is increases of 0.05%. If in the examination it comes that there has been a increase in the forest cover in India, but you will be saying, no, there are development projects going on, so how can the increase be there? No, that is wrong. Because if you see according to the data, an increase in 156.41 square kilometer has been there, which is equivalent to 0.05%. Why this? Because you know that India's area itself is 32,87,263 kilometers square. And if we take out the percentage, then it comes out to be this. Now, increase in the forest and the tree cover or the green cover, there has been an increase of this much, 1,445 square kilometer, which is equivalent to 18%. So the remaining is because of the tree cover that has increased. That is non-forest land where the trees are present. That is known as a tree cover. Now, forest and tree cover in India, total forest and tree cover in India covers this much area. See, you don't have to be very specific with respect to the area. You should have a brief idea, like 25.17% of the total geographical area. Forest cover, 21.76% of the geographical area. Tree cover, 3.41%. Now, this is something that you should be aware of, because see, 21.76% is the forest cover and 3.41% is a tree cover. Combined, it comes down to be 25.17%. Mangroves, total mangrove cover is 0.15% of the total geographical area. Net mangrove cover decrease from 2021. So there has been a net decrease also observed over here. That a decrease, highest loss in Gujarat, increase in Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra. Please remember, few years back, this question was asked also in the regions where the decrease has been there or where the maximum mangrove cover is present. So these questions are asked because the report comes here, has come this time. So that means 2025 prelims, it is going to be asked. So the data that is being given to you, please make a note of it in a very simplified form without taking the area, having little bit percentage so that you know what the increase and decrease has been. Now let's move ahead. States ranking with respect to the largest forest and tree cover area. That means it is combining the forest and the tree area together and then coming to the statistics. So in that case, Madhya Pradesh, which in square kilometers has 85,724, Arunachal Pradesh 67,083, Maharashtra 65,383. Now please remember, this is about the total area under the tree and forest cover. It is not talking about the percentage of area in a particular state. Let us say if a state has 100 kilometers square, and if let us say 20 kilometers square, let us say is the total area, and the forest cover is let us say 20 kilometers square. So that means 20% is under forest, right? Another thing is that if we take let us say 50 kilometers square. So right now we are talking just about the area. The reason behind it is the state which is going to be larger has a greater possibility of having more forest resources also, in spite of the fact that as a total percentage it might be less. But the area being large, so that is why possibly the forest cover can be large. So that is one of the reasons that you need to understand. So with respect to the largest forest plus tree cover, Madhya Pradesh first, Arunachal and then Maharashtra. Then if you come with respect to those states where there has been an increase in the tree and the forest cover, this becomes important because in the paper it can be asked which states have basically increased the forest cover in their states. So first is Chhattisgarh, 683 square kilometer. Then Uttar Pradesh, something very good that Uttar Pradesh has increased the forest and the tree cover. Majorly contribution has also been from the side of the tree cover also over here. Odisha and then Rajasthan. Now this is the order that you should be knowing. Then highest percentage of forest cover. Now this is percentage wise. Now please understand, if your area is 10 kilometers square, now over here let us say 9.1 kilometers square is under some form of forest. So that means what will happen? will basically mean that you have larger forest cover. So that is one of the things. Now, if your area is very small, automatically if the forest is more, it will increase the percentage. So that is something that you should keep in mind. That is why smaller states and union territories over here have a greater tendency to be higher in the list, the top in the list. That is why we see highest percentage forest cover, Lakshadweep 91.33, Mizoram 85.34, Andaman Nicobar Islands 81.62% percentage of the total geographical area of this particular union territories and the state. You should be knowing that. Next comes carbon stock. The total carbon stock is 72,085.5 million tons, increase in 81.5 million tons since 2021. Soil organic carbon accounts for 55% of the total stock. Next comes the Western Ghats eco-sensitive area. This is again very important. We have previously also studied with respect to the uh, 𝐑𝐄𝐂𝐏 committee. We have also run Kasturi Rajan committees on. We have studied about Western Ghat region, which is very sensitive with respect to environment. So with that perspective, we have to study what has been the changes. The forest cover in the Western Ghats is again 44,043 square kilometers. It is 73% of the total region. Loss over the 10 years, 58.22 square kilometers. So there has been a decrease in the forest cover. Now that becomes very, very important because there has been an increasing commercialization in this particular region. Forest cover in the northeastern region, again, total forest cover in the northeastern region is 1,74,394 square kilometers, which is 67% of the total geographical area. And this is something very huge, that 67% is under the forest cover. The northeastern region recorded a decline of 327 square kilometers, and Mizoram recorded an increase. So this is again Mizoram is unique in this case, that overall the northeastern region has recorded a decrease in the forest cover, but Mizoram has recorded an increase in the forest cover. So that is again a very, very important dimension. Next, forest cover in the hill districts. Please have a look over here. Please have a look over here. The total forest cover in the hill districts of India is uh, over here just 2,83,713 square kilometers, which accounts for 40% of the total geographical area of these districts. The forest cover in the hill districts has increased by 234 square kilometers since 2021. Agroforestry, that means agriculture and forestry are being combined. So that means what happens sometimes when the farmers are growing the crops, they also grow trees along with that. So that is again increasing the tree cover also. Along with it, combining agriculture and forestry as a means that can be used for commercialization also, and has various other benefits also, ecological benefits, commercial benefits also, along with it, protecting the crops for that matter also. So that agroforestry over here, we see total tree green cover under the agroforestry in India is estimated to be 1,27,590 square kilometers. There has been an increase in the cover by 21,286 square kilometers. Now, this is again an important dimension that the farmers are basically using this practice very often. They are also planting trees in their fields. So that is again an important dimension. Total growing stock under the agroforestry is estimated to be 1,291 billion cubic meters, showing an increase of 28.56%. Next, challenges. Now, this becomes important because it can be asked in your paper also that what are the challenges that are being faced currently as reported in the report over here. So, let's see. First is decline in the moderately dense forest and open forest. So, there's a significant reduction. You've already studied what is moderately dense forest and open forest over here. You can just have a look here. Moderately dense forest and open forest. So these are the ones which are canopy density of 40 to 70% and open forest from 10 to 40%. So there has been a moderate decline in them. So that is again a very, very important dimension here. Next is deforestation in the eco-sensitive zone in the Western Ghats. There has been a significant reduction. Again, that endangers the flora, fauna, and the ecological relation that is present there. Next is forest fire vulnerability. Increasing the instances of forest fire has been a major concern over here, where not only impacts the forest cover, the ecological relation, also in the flora, fauna are badly impacted because of that, and along with it contributing to the pollution also for that matter. Three top states where the fire incidents have been observed are: first is Uttarakhand, then Odisha, and then Chhattisgarh. These are the ones where there has been large number of cases of the forest fire. Let's move. pressure on the forest resources, rising demands for timber, non-timber forest products, and fuel wood continues to exert unsustainable pressure on the forest ecosystem. Then fragmentation and habitat loss, because we realize that there is rising commercialization where the forest region is basically being impacted and cut, and many in various cases illegally also. So that what impacts is that a lot of fragmentation and the habitat loss happens for the uh, various animals that are there. And then what happens because of that? Then we experience animal and human conflicts also that rise. Right. Next is management and monitoring gaps, lack of comprehensive monitoring and enforcement mechanism in the forested regions also lead to a lot of illegal practices of illegal cutting the forest and then encroachment of the land. Next is unsustainable resource use. Over extraction of non-timber forest, grazing and wood collection leads to forest degradation. Now that again is a major concern that has been pointed in the report. Next is biodiversity loss. By default, when other things are happening, it will lead to a lot of flora and fauna being impacted. One of the examples is in the Western Ghats also, where we saw a decrease of 58 square kilometers area led to loss in the various biodiversity regions over there. So that is why we realize that this is a very problematic issue. Okay, next moving ahead. Next challenge is pressure on the forest resources, highly dependence on the rural and the tribal communities. See, because if the forest cover is decreased, we realize that large number the tribal communities are though not necessarily always forest living in the forest region, but large number of tribals do live in the forestry. That is again an important thing. So their dependence on the forest resources very very important. They have an intricate relation okay, with the land and forest. They derive their nutrition, their livelihood from the forest itself. So when the forest cover keeps on decreasing, what happens is that by default it will lead to impacting the tribal community also, and there will be going to be resource crunch for the tribals also, and then would lead to conflict with the tribal and the government also. Next is desertification. Deforestation contributes to the increase in the regions of the desertification because the trees are basically binding the soil together. And once you start cutting the trees, there's a possibility of that region being devoid of moisture in the soil also, and that leads to increase in the forest and increase in the desertification. This has been observed in the region close to Delhi also, where cutting of the trees largely contributed to the increase in the forest, increase in the desert cover from the side of the Rajasthan region also. So this is again a major problem. Eco-sensitive zone reduction. Forest cover, ecologically, we realize that the Western Ghats and the other eco-sensitive zones have been reduced in the area because, again, their commercial reasons have been there, commercialization has been there, and obviously for various development projects also, we see that this is badly impacted. Next. Next is why the MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, reimposed restriction in three northeastern states. This is with respect to protected area regime. So let's understand first of all, what's the context of this particular news? Now see, when I talk about protected area regime, the context is that the central government has reimposed, that means it was earlier present, it was removed and then again reimposed here, the protected area regime, PAR, the northeastern states of Manipur, Mizoram and Nagaland. Now, major reason why this has been done is, see, according to the central government, decision arises by the increasing security concerns due to the influx of individuals from the neighboring countries. Now, please understand, influx has not only been from the sides of Myanmar, it has also been from the region of Bangladesh, because we realize that there has been a crisis in Bangladesh where people might move from that region. Along with it, please understand, it is not only Bangladesh. We realize that there has been a lot of problems in the state of Manipur that is right now going on, where we realize that Meiteis, Kukis are right now fighting. Over there, again, the Nagas are also playing a role by siding with the side of the Kukis. And we realize that the Nagas over there have a lot of fringe groups that have closer association with those in Myanmar. And possibly that raises a security concern with respect to the internal security of India. Now, when we talk about outsiders or people from the other countries coming neighboring countries, it includes the Myanmar region and the Bangladesh region. So all these things are closely associated with each other. So over here, we realize that security concerns and the influx of individuals from the neighboring countries. Now, the thing comes, what do you mean by this protected area regime? See, it is a security measure under the Foreigners Protected Area Order of 1958. Now, what does it say? Under this particular order, Executive Order of 1958, this protected area regime can be invoked. What it is basically, it mandates that the foreign nationals require special permits to visit certain areas in India, especially in the sensitive border regions. So that means it prohibits any foreigner from entering in this particular region without any due permission. You cannot enter this region, in simple words. That is why it is restricting the movement of any foreigner or entry of any foreigner in the. This is taken as a security measure. Now, the states and the union territories under the protected area regime, which are already there, are now overall parts of the northeastern states like Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, and Sikkim right now are under PAR. Now, please understand the concept of inner light permit region also come over here now. Please understand that also. Some areas overlap with the ILP system. Now, what is ILP? Inner line permit, it is a document required by the Indian citizen enter and travel with certain restrictions in areas of northeastern states of Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Mizoram, and Manipur. Now, please understand, there's a difference between inner line permit and when we're talking about a protected area regime under the Foreign Protected Areas Order. Over here, the foreign national requires special permission to enter these particular regions where PAR is imposed, while on the other hand, inner light permit is with respect to the Indian citizens who might be requiring or certain restrictions might be imposed on them with respect to travel in certain regions. So, over here, the concept is with respect to Indian citizens and with respect to the uh, protected area regime, it under the Foreign Protected Areas Order, it is with respect to the foreign national. This is something that you should be able to differentiate because it can be asked in your prelims paper as well as your mains examination. Let's move ahead. ILP, Inner Line Permit, was introduced in India to protect the indigenous tribes from exploitation in the name of tourism and to preserve their rich heritage. ILP system is not explicitly mentioned in the Indian Constitution. However, it is based on the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation of 1873. So, ILP draws its power from Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation of 1873, something that you should be knowing. Next, provision of the protected area permit. Please understand, PAP is generally valid for 10 days with an extension option. Issuing authorities, Ministry of Home Affairs is basically dealing with that. Requirements for obtaining PAP: foreign nationals must provide necessary documentation, including the passports and itineraries. Certain nationals may face additional restrictions due to the security concerns. Exemption: citizens of Bhutan are exempted from the PAP requirements because it is a protectorate state of India. Let's move ahead. 13th amendment with respect to Tamil Nadu. Please understand, we don't have to go into the politics and all, but we have to see what the concern are with respect to the 13th amendment. Now, the 13th amendment is not with respect to the Indian constitution, it is with respect to the Sri Lankan constitution. Now, please understand, we have very well known that India's relationship with Sri Lanka has had historically connected, whether it is with respect to Ramayan, whether it is respect to uh, Ram Setu, whether it is respect to Ramji going to Sri Lanka and getting Mata Sita ji back. So we have cultural relations. You know that Buddhism is a major religion over there. Sinhalese language is spoken. But along with it, we realize that during the British time, we saw in the northern and the eastern, also in certain parts of the central Tamil Nadu region, a lot of people from the Tamil Nadu were basically made to move to these regions for plantation. Now, that basically brought in contradiction or cultural contrast with respect to Sri Lanka. Why? Now, Sri Lanka being a country which basically is a majority Buddhist country with Sinhalese as a language, whereas the Tamil or the Tamilians who migrated over there, their language is Tamil, large number of them being Hindus also. So that led to a cultural contrast or a differences with respect to the majority population Sri Lanka. Now, this had led to a lot of issues, protests being done by the Tamilians also with respect to them being treated as second-rate citizens. Over here, we realize an LTTE movement came up under Prabhakaran, which basically led to an armed revolt against the government also. So that is why this was a basic background of we know that one of the various issues respect to which later led to a civil war in Sri Lanka also. Later, Prabhakaran and LTT was completely admonished by the Sri Lankan army. So getting to know or knowing about a brief detail about what the Sri Lankan is, now let us see the background of it. See, under 1978 constitution of Sri Lanka, please remember that, Sri Lanka had a unitary government with all the with with all the powers in the hands of the center. There has been many times, please remember, the constitution of Sri Lanka has been revamped. Earlier on, please remember, under these constitutions was basically a Buddhist state also. Because later on, then it became a secular country. So that means when it is a Buddhist state, a special preference is people following Buddhism. So now the Tamil minority on Sri Lanka was concentrated in the northern and the eastern provinces, and a very minuscule minority is also present in the central Sri Lankan region. Please understand this. Sri Lanka, this region over here, this region has a Tamil majority, certain in the eastern, very small minority in the central region. We do not talk about central because because it is generally considered a very small minority, but the reality is that over here the condition of the Tamilians is worse. They're like slaves over here. So, so we are generally saying that northern region and the Jaffna region over here, this is the region where the Britishers basically brought the Tamilians from Tamil Nadu and then placed them over here in search of in the way to get plantation labor from India, which was cheap also and easy to get. So they started working here as plantation labor. Now coming to this again, that now what happened is under the 1978 constitution, it was a unitary government with the power in the hand of the center, while as the Tamil minority in Sri Lanka in the northern, the eastern, minuscule minority in the central region, they were fighting for their rights because the constitution basically gave a upper hand to the Buddhist population and with the people speaking Sinhalese language. So the struggle of the rights and the greater autonomy here had led to a civil war between liberation tigers of Tamil Ilam and the Sri Lankan government. It was led by Prabhakaran, right? So this was a civil war. That means they were fighting that we also need equal rights as the others, which the central government wasn't providing. So what happens? So please understand, we need to understand certain things. So what was the 13th Amendment? See, if you need to go a little bit into the backdrop also, on July 29, 1987, Indo-Sri Lanka Accord was signed between signed between Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and Sri Lankan President J.R. Jayawardene, which stated that the power devolution of the powers to the provinces. Now see what happened is the the president of Sri Lanka and the Prime Minister of India basically came to a conclusion that it is important that some devolution, decentralization, or giving of the power to the region in the north and the eastern region, which are dominated by Tamils, should be given so that this will basically resolve the problem that you are facing. So they came to a conclusion and an accord was signed between India and Sri Lanka that is known as the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord of 1987, in which what all provisions are given basically led to 13th Amendment made passed. We will be seeing what are the provisions also. The accord that was signed, what all provisions were there, which that converted into what? That converted into the 13th Amendment, right? So on 14th November 1987, the Sri Lankan Parliament passed the 13th Amendment to 1978 Constitution of Sri Lanka, and the Provincial Councils Act number 42 of this established provincial councils. So that means a lot of provincial councils and decentralization of power was done because there were certain provisions in the Indo-Sri Lankan Accord which basically mandated that there should be devolution of power and various other provisions which we'll be seeing right now. So implementation of that accord by an amendment into the Constitution of Sri Lanka is known as the 13th Amendment with respect to the Sri Lankan Constitution, which is basically empowering or devolution, relating a devolution of power and empowering the various provinces that are being created. So coming here, it was after the signing of the Indo-Sri Lankan Accord between Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and President Jayawardene. The accord aimed at amending the constitution and the transfer of some powers like agriculture, health, etc., to the government of the country's 9 provinces and establish a constitutional solution to a civil war. That means because it was a unitary government, so it is better to devolve certain powers to certain provinces that would be created, and that will lead to the civil war coming to an end and resolve the issue. Now, for this, the 13th Amendment, for this, the 13th Amendment was 13th Amendment was passed and allowed for the devolution of power, and this amendment was an amendment with respect to the Sri Lankan constitution. So now it would be clear that an Indo-Sri Lanka Accord was signed in on in 1987 between India and Sri Lanka, between Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and President Jayawardene, and implementation of that was done through a constitutional amendment, which we see in the form of what, the 13th Amendment. Now, if we move ahead, what were the clauses along with the devolution of our power and the creation of the provinces? What was the other provision over here? Apart from the devolution of power, other clauses were English and Tamil being adopted as the official language along with the Sinhalese or the Sinhala language. Lifting of emergency in the eastern and the northeastern provinces by 15th August 1987. Surrender of arms by the militant groups of the LTT who had basically picked up arms and were fighting the Sri Lankan government. The general amnesty to the political and other prisoners now held in the custody under the emergency laws. So, an amnesty for the political prisoners. So, the accord also says that the government of India will underwrite and guarantee the resolution and cooperate with the implementation of these proposals. Now, what happens is that when you read these provisions, they do sound good, and they sound that yes, the to lead to devolution of power that will help resolve the problems of the rights issues, but the problem that arose is were not properly implemented. The Tamil groups in Sri Lanka have appealed to India multiple times to make sure that the accord is being implemented fully. Now, what happened is the provinces across Sri Lanka were given greater autonomy after the amendment. The central government retains the land and the police powers, while the elected provincial councils, like the state assemblies in India, can legislate on subjects like agriculture, housing, road transport, education, and health. While some are unhappy with too little devolution, the hardline nationalists raise alarms of weakening of the central government's authority. The Sinhalese nationalists, on the other hand, oppose the 13th Amendment. As they can see, it is being imposed by India. So, what is going on? See, please understand. Over here, we saw that this is a 13th Amendment where we see that all these things are being accepted. And along with it, basically, we see that uh, devolution is done, but not completely. Police powers and land powers are not given to the states. Along with it, health, agriculture, education, and minor topics are basically subjects are given to the states. And there is again a tussle between the two groups, one who favor the 13th Amendment in Sri Lankan politics and others who said no, it should not be done. It is basically a imposition of those provisions by under the Indian pressure that it has been done. So there is a lot of opposition also that is present here. Now please understand, when we talk about with respect to the Tamil dominated region, what was done, see here. The region for whom devolution was largely intended never really benefited from it. In the Tamil region, that is with respect to the northern region and the eastern, they never benefited. The Sinhalese provinces saw regular elections and political parties benefited from the experience of grassroots politics. The northern and the eastern stayed under the central government control for long. What happens when the devolution took place, other than the northern and the eastern provinces, other than them, that means that those who were under the Sinhalese dominated regions saw the elections, they benefited from it, but the ones which were in Tamil dominated in the northern and the eastern were still under the central government. So, in true sense, the devolution never took place. So, we realize that since 2014, the provincial elections are pending across Sri Lanka. This is because a parliament is yet to amend a 2007 act for reforming the election process by introducing a hybrid system, first past the post representation and the current system of proportional representation. We already know that there has been a lot of problems with respect to the civil war that took place, then a lot of problems with respect to the former president trying to amend the constitution, Mr. Rajapaksa, and then along with it, a lot of problems that came. So we realize or come to a conclusion over here that in true sense, the devolution basically never took place. Now what happens? We realized this that, and obviously it was never implemented. So we realized that later on, Prabhakaran again further aggravated the problem, or let us say the war with Sri Lankans. And later on, we realized that Sri Lankan army had to charge them, and later on, they were killed also. But even today, what happens is the Tamil minority are still focusing on expectation that India might pressurize Sri Lanka for implementation of the proper devolution, because though the LTT is non-functional, has been demolished by the Sri Lankan army. But what is important over here is that at least the devolution now take place, that they experience or feel that they are part of the country, Tamilian minority over there. That is what is the 13th Amendment and the problems associated with that. Let's move ahead. Mains question of the day. Non-implementation of the 13th Amendment is denting the Indo-Sri Lankan ties. Discuss. The question for you. Prelims topics. Philippines set to acquire US Typhoon missile system. So let us see what is it. This is the Typhoon missile system. The photographs are in front of you. And this is the can be asked in the paper also. Please understand, Typhoon, as it is known as a strategic mid-range fire system, is an integrated weapon system being developed by the United States Navy. It is capable of firing standard missiles, SM-6, a ballistic missile, defense ammunition that can also target ships at a range of 370 kilometers. It can also fire one of the flagship missiles, that is Tom Hanks land attack missiles. You'll be seeing that also. A maneuverable cruise missile also. A full Typhon weapon system battery comprises 4 launchers, a command post, a reload, and a support vehicle, all on the trailers. Off-board sources are used to supply targeted emission. So this is again a very important with respect to the strategic and security measures of United States. Now, currently Philippines is set to acquire. We'll see that also. But before that, Tom Hanks missile. It is a US-made long-range cruise missile used for deep land attack warfare. It can be launched from a ship or submarine, deliver its warhead precisely for a long range, fires at a low altitude, strike fixed targets. Now, having read or got a brief idea of what basically it is, we need to understand when Typhoon missile system is being bought by Philippines, what is the reason behind it? It is again a strategic measure. China is having issues with Philippines, because again, the nine dash line and encroachment of the sea regions, uh, tussle or a form of a silent war between Philippines and uh, basically China takes place. So what happens now? Philippines is an ally of United States. Now, placing these Typhoon missile system over there tends to increase the US influence in that particular region, and that tends to put China in a difficult position. That is why this is being done strategically to counter China. Next, 2.6 lakh locally made noise barrier put on the bullet train route. Again, noise barriers are being put for a reason, that because bullet trains tend to run at a very fast speed, and that might produce certain form of noise also, and noise barriers tend to prevent that. So we know that first Indian bullet train project, Mumbai Ahmedabad high speed train project, we know Japan will provide the technical financial support. Estimated cost is 1,10,000 crores, which is going to increase also. Track length of 508 kilometers, elevated 468, tunnel 27, ground 13 kilometers. Maximum design speed for 350 kilometers, maximum operating speed of 320. Journey time is basically 2.07 hours limited stops and 2.58 hours while stopping. Commencement of work in 2017, it was to complete by, again, planned was 2023 December, but you know that COVID stuck and we saw a lot of delays taking place. So currently we realize that it will take some few years. So it is the first bullet train will run in Mumbai Ahmedabad high speed corridor. Construction began in 2017. You've seen that 508 kilometers long corridor. So maximum speed is 350, will be operating at 320. Uh, we realized that it was announced in 2009 and 10 budget also. Now, the financial and technology support is basically given by Japan as a good strategic partner of India. Next, multiple choice questions. First question with options. Answer. Second question. Options. Answer. These are the options. Answer. Third question. Answer. Fourth question with options. Answer. Fifth question with options. Answer. So this was the analysis of the Hindu from today's newspaper. Hope you liked it and enjoyed it. We'll be continuing tomorrow also as per the requirement for the civil services examination. Take care and Jai Hind.